Great. Okay, hi everyone. I'm Buckley Clifford from Public Health England Marketing Activation Team. I am now completely paranoid that we're a crappy client and that we're kind of pissing our agencies off, but actually I'm still quite confident that the ways of working that we have got work really well for us and also work really well for our fantastic agency group, two of whom are here with me today. So hopefully they'll back that up when they get to their slides. So yes, we are Public Health England. We offer a slightly different perspective today, I guess, because we're talking about the public sector perspective. And I guess we're the first presentation that includes clients and agencies on the stage together. So that's fantastic. We are, obviously absolutely delighted to be here to talk about our experiences. We've got some great ideas already from the ways of working that have been shared this morning. Like everybody else, we're not going to give away too many secrets, but we're going to talk about the principles behind how we approach our planning framework, measurement framework, and remuneration framework as well. So essentially what we are wanting to do today is to share, we're going to use Change4Life as a case study. So we deliver campaigns across the whole spectrum of the life course, everything from breastfeeding, stopping smoking for pregnant women, all the way through the life course up to spotting the signs and symptoms of cancer, becoming a dementia friend. But we're going to focus on probably the campaign that gets the most scrutiny across everything that we do, and we're going to focus on Change4Life as an example of how we work with the agencies. I think we're going to try and get as specific as we possibly can, so we've got some econometric modelling from Pete, who works at the planning agency, and a bit of detail on how we measure partners' input, so we'll get as specific as we can. But I guess in terms of making the more general point, you can essentially generalise from the way that we work, because this tends to be the way that we work across all of our campaigns. So we're going to be sharing the mission, sharing the ambition of Change4Life. Hopefully it won't be a new campaign for most of you. We've been going for about 5 years. We'll be looking at some of the successes that we've achieved together, and we absolutely see ourselves as working in partnership with our agency group and see those as joint successes achieved together over the past 5 years. I'm going to move on to Pete, who's going to be talking about the econometric modelling, the measurement framework, the performance framework that we use through the campaign, and really how we have tried to shift that conversation from expenditure to investment. And I guess lots of people from the agency side have talked about how they treat their clients' budgets as their own budgets. Essentially, for public health campaigns, we're going one step further than that, because this is genuinely a shared budget. We are funded by the taxpayer, so it's crucially important that we demonstrate that return on investment. And then Jane's going to come in at the end to talk about how the agency group works together to foster collaboration. We see ourselves as absolutely central to those ways of working, and how we are starting to use the measurement framework that Pete's talking about to reward performance in all of our contracts. And we are, again, like lots of people here today, we are starting to do this, but the shift is definitely towards more performance-based remuneration. So, sharing the mission of Change4Life, hopefully you have all heard of it. Has anybody in the room not heard of Change4Life or seen the yellow? So it's familiar to everybody. We launched 5 years ago. Last week, actually, we published our big 5 years on evaluation report. So for the keen beans in the audience, there is an 80-page summary of all the things that Change4Life has achieved over the past 5 years. Two things to flag, I guess, in terms of what we're trying to do. The most obvious point is that childhood obesity is a huge and growing and complex issue. It requires a huge and complex and multifaceted and big solution. So our philosophy from the start was to involve as many partners as we possibly could in the solution. And we genuinely believe that practically every brand in the country, every organisation in the country can play its part. And we have tried to be as flexible as we possibly can in the way that we operate to encourage as many people as possibly can to play their part. Second key thing, I guess, is just in terms of the creative strategy. So what was fresh and new about the campaign, and I think still remains fresh and new about the campaign, is the tone of voice that it used to the consumer. So the target audience is largely C2D families with 5 to 11-year-old kids at home. The tone of voice is absolutely supportive, empathetic. There's no blaming in there, no hectoring. And the approach that we use is all about how to make these changes that you want to make, not why you should make these changes, and absolutely a shift away from that kind of top-down model of government communications. campaign. So to sum up, it's absolutely on the side of the consumer and it's absolutely working in partnership, and you'll see some of those kind of imperatives coming through in the measurement framework that Pete talks about. Everyone will say this, we're about much more than a TV ad, but I think the TV ads, more than anything else, encapsulate the way that we work. So we're just going to show you our latest ad, which I hope is set up on the next slide.
We love pop, but Mum says we need to make some healthy swaps, starting with those sugary drinks. She says we need to see what's really in them. Up to 10 cubes in one can and up to 52 in a bottle? That's loads of calories. So this year, we're making one of Change4Life's smart swaps. Sugary to sugar-free drinks. That could cut out up to 3/4 of a bag of sugar for a monthly diet. Nice.
Sign up online to get free money off vouchers and a smart swapper packed with easy meal ideas for your family.
So hopefully that kind of encapsulates the approach. Obviously, we're about much more than TV ads, and if I was here this time next week, we'd be sharing our brand new physical activity summer ad, which launches next week, which is in partnership with Disney. So that's also going to be fantastic. Keep an eye out for that one next week. So 5 years in, what have we achieved? Obviously, it's crucially important that we show what we've achieved in order to unlock funding for future investment in the campaign. I think we would characterise the achievements in two ways. First of all, we have achieved the big numbers, the scale and the pace, which is crucially important. Numbers are huge, so practically all mums in the country are aware of Change4Life. Really high measures of trust, support, measures around people saying it speaks to people like me, so that's fantastic. We're really close to 2 million families joining the campaign, so these are families who join up and get regular updates of our tools, support, online programmes. Hundreds of thousands of kids have participated in school clubs across the country, and there are loads more measures beyond this in our 5 years on evaluation report. I think one of the ones that we're most proud of is that we've got 200 active commercial partners supporting the campaign, which has just grown like topsy over the past 5 years. And we've got 70,000 local supporters, so operating in GP surgeries, schools. There's a real kind of grassroots presence for the campaign. So we've got the scale, we've got the pace. Clearly, we also need to demonstrate how the campaign has changed people's behaviour and sustained those shifts in behaviour. And over one of the benefits of going for 5 years is that we've got lots of data now that's supporting our evaluation of how we have helped people to change. There's a lot of pressure on getting this right, so we are under lots of scrutiny to get the academic evaluation right. We tend to work with leading academics from universities. We're in the territory of kind of randomised control trials and really in-depth analysis that takes quite a long time to deliver, but we're starting to see the results of that now, and we've had some fantastic results in terms of basket analysis for people who join the campaign and significant shifts in activity levels for people who sign up to the physical activity campaign. The key measure is about 20 years from now. We want to see shifts in childhood obesity. Top line from that, this is by no means a good news chart, but the top line from this chart is that childhood obesity appears to be plateauing. And one of our core measures is impact on the public purse. So for the first time a couple of years ago, in-kind contributions from partners for the campaign exceeded central government investment. So that's a crucial turning point from our point of view. So, Pete, I'm going to shift on to shifting the conversation from expenditure to our new investment model.
Cool.
Pass that to you.
So I'm just going to take you through how we make sure that our budget is seen as an investment rather than an expenditure. As you'd imagine, with the ongoing austerity measures in government, actually expenditure is quite a dirty word in government, and it's one that we try to avoid. And actually any conversation that we have with government looks for the returns and makes sure it's all based around investment rather than expenditure. And what that means is that we're under a lot more scrutiny. We have to show our outcomes more clearly, and we're under a lot more demands. And really the body that's behind, or the body where the heart of that pressure is the ERG, which was set up by the coalition government. And the ERG, or the Efficiency and Reform Group, is a body that's been created to try and make savings for the government, so return budget back to the public purse. And what they ensure is that we have a lot of evidence for effectiveness and efficiency in everything we do. And understandably, as you'd imagine, with marketing, which is often labelled as an expenditure, the ERG are very interested in what we're doing, and therefore they have to sign off on all the budgets that Change4Life uses. So over a low threshold, all budgets are signed off by the ERG, which looks for efficiencies and evidence of effectiveness. So in answer to that, or due to that demand, we've created a very robust measurement framework which ensures that we can prove that what we're doing is being effective and doing a good job. And there's really three principles, or key principles, that sit behind that measurement framework. The first is measurement is baked in from the very beginning. So what we don't do is slip measurement on the end. It's not a bolt-on at the end of the campaign that we think about near the end. It's actually baked in throughout every initiative and every piece of activity that we run. So the very design of Change4Life, which is all built around getting people to register, allows us to have a lot of data about who these people are, where their behaviours are, and how we can best help them. The second one, and this fits with the first, I guess, is data collation is key. So it's all about getting as much data on the people who are engaging with Change4Life as possible. As Alexia said, we've just got under 2 million families now on the Change4Life database, and that's an invaluable resource for understanding the effectiveness of our activity. And it also gives us an understanding of where people are on their behaviour change journey and how we can best help them. And then thirdly, working in partnership. So although we've got a great deal of data, what we've learned over the last few years is that to really exploit this data, we've got to build partnerships with not only academia, so we do a lot of work with academics, but also commercial organisations. So the academia gives us the sort of robustness and the knowledge, whereas the commercial organisations give us that pace and scale, which allows us to optimise our campaigns quickly. And the other part on working in partnerships, which we're starting to build up, and I'll come on to in a second more, is trying to find data partnerships. So we've got a big database of just under 2 million people. Other people have databases as well, and we've started to do a lot of data matching to try and understand more effectively what our activity is doing. So the measurement framework, and this is a very simplistic way of looking at it, but it's good for the slide, is based on a number of different outputs and outcomes, both short-term and long-term. And really these are all intermediate measures towards the major objective, as Alexia talked about, which is trying to reduce the level of childhood obesity. So it's really allowing us a line of sight to seeing how effective our work is being, from awareness, how many people know about Change4Life and what their attitude is towards Change4Life, to registration, how many people have actually engaged and signed up for Change4Life, to product usage, how are people using the products we create, down to behaviour change, both in the short term and sustained long-term behaviour change. So for awareness, as you'd expect, we use quantitative pre and post studies with a research company, TNS. But with registration, what we do to analyse our registration is use econometric modelling. So this is regression analysis, which looks at all the different parts of the marketing mix we've got, from the partnerships to the events to the TV advertising to the radio, which parts of these are driving these registrations most effectively. So we look at all the different variables, and then we're allowed to unpick which parts of them are most effectively driving registration. And again, obviously this is a proxy for people getting involved, which is a proxy of behaviour change, which is a proxy of levelling out the obesity. But it's a start and a step in the right direction when we understand, okay, this amount of budget is going to get this many registrations. So it allows us to look back at what's happened and understand why that's happened, but it also allows us to plan forwards. So we can understand we've got this amount of budget, we're putting it in these different channels, okay, we expect this many registrations. The next step is product usage. So as I said, all of our measurement, all of our initiatives, and our activity has measurement built in. So the ad that Alexia played from Smart Swaps, just to give you an idea of that, the idea was that people select a swap that they'd do. There were 7 healthy lifestyle swaps. You'd select one, and then we'd send you emails and texts to remind you, and little pieces of help to remind you you're on that swap, and here's a few things you can do to make it easier. And although that was very helpful for the people involved, what it also allowed us to do was evaluate where people were up to. So people responded to that communication, and it gave us an idea of which swap was most popular and also which swap people found most easily to do. And that data is directly impacting what we do in the future and optimizing our campaigns further. So from a behaviour change perspective, and again Alexia's touched on this, we've got a number of different data partnerships that we're working with. So the first one is with Kantar and their World Panel. World Panel's basically a panel of 30,000 homes which studies their purchasing behaviour. So what we're looking for here is the difference between someone who's engaged with Change4Life or registered for Change4Life and those people who haven't. So we account for obviously demographic, purchasing history and lifestyle differences. And what we've found is, for example, on the Smart Swaps campaign, we've seen an 8.6% reduction in the volume of sugary drinks that are purchased by homes who have registered for Change4Life in comparison similar homes which have not. So that's a great sign of effectiveness. And then on a more sustained long-term basis, so looking at a year, does people getting engaged and registering for Change4Life in January still impact their behaviour a year later? We've used a partnership with dunnhumby. So dunnhumby manage the Tesco Club Card database. They've got millions of people on that. We've got under just 2 million people on our database, and that's allowed us to put together a sample of just over 100,000. So a really robust sample looking at people who've engaged with Change4Life versus those who haven't, and accounting for all the differences. And again, what we found is that people who have engaged have shown positive changes in their behaviour, but we've also found sort of details as well about what we should do and how we can be effective. So for example, what the dunnhumby data has shown us is that if we're extremely explicit about what we want people to do, swap a sugary drink for a sugar-free one, people are more likely to do that, and we see bigger behaviour change. But if we're a bit more broader, then it's less likely to see that behaviour change. So again, this helps us to optimise our activity and really directly impact how we shape our campaigns. So now I'll pass over to Jane to talk about remuneration.
Thank you very much. PHE are absolutely fantastic at fostering collaboration, and I'm very pleased to be on the stage along with Pete to talk about it. But actually in the room today, I think are probably representatives from all the agencies that are in the mix. And it really is a group that collaborates extremely well. And I think there are probably a number of factors that have contributed towards that. The first of which is that from a contractual position, they're good long-term contracts. Each contract is 3 years long. And I think that gives us a real opportunity to work together and build very strong relationships. It's very much a blended team. So elements and people within the teams will spend quite a bit of time actually in PHE's offices and vice versa. So we really do work as a blended team. It's a team, interestingly, where the client, this topic of conversation came up earlier, is very prepared to pay for the very senior people who will deliver the real value to their business. It's a team that shares a common belief. We really believe that creativity will inspire our audiences and that evidence-based marketing will actually support them in changing behaviour. And wherever we sit in our agency groups, we are absolutely united by that belief. PHE sets out, in fact, a 3-year marketing plan, and within that, annual marketing plans overall and for Change4Life specifically. But at the outset of working on each individual campaign, there is a shared vision for that campaign and a shared set of KPIs, not agency-specific KPIs, but a shared goal for the campaign. We then actually kick off with a top table meeting, really, and it was referenced this morning, actually, I think, in the first speech by you, Martin, about how important it is that the senior players get round that table right up front and understand what is the business issue that we are trying to tackle. And that's the very first meeting that happens. That actually happens before the integrated agency brief goes in. So that meeting shapes that brief. There's then an integrated agency briefing, all the agency round the table together, an integrated agency response. The ringmaster for that response can come from any one of the agencies. It just depends where the sort of bent or the leaning of that campaign is as to who leads. So there's no sort of rightful ringmaster in every single situation. There are lots of co-creation sessions. Again, the ideas that you see can come from any one of the agencies that's, that sits there in the mix. Taking one step back from that sort of co-creation type approach on the day-to-day campaigns, we also have quarterly agency heads meetings, which is the chief execs of the agencies, but very importantly with the chief exec and the C-suite of Public Health England too, which is where we get that chance, again, to take that step back and look at what the business issues, for want of a better description, are, and where we as senior agency players can make real contributions to the overarching marketing strategy. And some of the key principles, the 5 key principles that are in the document that Alexia referred to, came very much out of those sessions. So definitely a spirit of collaboration really fostered by the client and shared very much by the agencies. In terms of rewarding performance, so the sort of core remuneration model is a fixed base price for the output based on time, but then there is an element of PBR, which, as Alexia said, is now coming into play across the piece. And I suppose rather than PBR, it probably would be more accurate to say performance-related pay. So the agencies then have that component. There are a number of hard measures and a number of soft measures that go into that component. And the 5 measures that you have there run across the piece. The individual specifics, of course, will vary depending upon the role that an individual agency plays in the mix. So I can give you a feel for what some of my specifics are and my agency specifics are. In the context of delivery, hard-nosed measure. You saw that chart that Alexia showed earlier on, which is where you could see that the investment from the private sector had outstripped the investment made by the public sector. That measure sits with us, and we have a financial target every year in terms of delivery as to what we're expected to bring in by collaborating with the private sector. The quality measure, for us, the media mix, part of the media mix that we work with a lot is more the owned and earned channels and working with partner organisations. And we're particularly doing that because we can reach where traditional paid-for media can't, i.e. the most vulnerable, at-risk, difficult to engage, difficult to reach audiences. So quality for us, our measure of quality, is how have we reached those audiences, so number, reach, and levels of engagement with those audiences. Responsiveness, for us, that's about how we support and service the client, and that's measured by a client satisfaction survey, perhaps a more conventional model that people in the room will be very familiar with. Financial, we have an element which is based on our efficiency in terms of our financial management. And last, but by absolutely no means least, because it probably is one of the most important measures, I would say, is on innovation. So the mantra, for those of you who know Sheila Mitchell, who is Alexia's boss, is always, what's bigger, what's better, what's new? And that is very much what innovation means. And so we are targeted on doing firsts, bigger, better. We are encouraged to run pilots in order to introduce new elements into the mix. The measurement is done in part by an agency evaluation survey, but also in the case of that hard measure that I talked about, by an external valuation of the delivery and the money that we bring into the campaign. And in this instance, it was negotiated, and the contracts are negotiated between marketing, procurement, and the agency. And I think that 3-way negotiation has got us, speaking very personally, to a very satisfactory point in being fairly remunerated for the senior inputs that we put into the business, but also for the rewards that we deliver. And last but by no means least, and I echo what Debbie said here earlier actually, which is the importance of awards. This campaign over the last 3 years has won 13 awards, most recent of which was an IPA Best of Health award. We are writing the evidence base as we speak for an effectiveness, an IPA Gold Standard IPA Effectiveness Award submission. It's important not just because we as agency people get really excited by winning awards, but also back to the point that you made, Pete, earlier, is that this is an extremely important demonstration that we have made effective investment rather than an expenditure point. And so thank you very much.